Have you ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or simply rejected by someone or something you deeply hoped for? It's a weight that settles in the heart. But what if I told you that very moment of rejection could be the gateway to a hidden strength you never knew you had? None of us escapes rejection, but what separates those who crumble from those who rise is how they choose to respond. In today's video, we'll uncover 13 profound lessons from Stoicism, rooted in the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, on how to transform rejection into fuel for growth, inner freedom, and unshakable character. 1. Let go of those who let go of you. There's a truth each of us must eventually face. At some point, you will be ignored, left unanswered, unseen, despite your efforts to connect. It could be someone you once called a close friend, someone you loved, or a group you longed to belong to. And the first reaction is usually pain. Our brains, wired for tribal survival, interpret indifference as a threat. But in that very moment, we're offered a choice: to keep craving attention from those who've turned away, or to let go and return to ourselves. Stoicism teaches that no one can wound you unless you permit it. This doesn't mean pain is wrong, but that pain shouldn't dictate your actions. When someone ignores you, the first thing you must remember is this: it doesn't define your worth. You don't become invisible just because someone refuses to see you. Their silence may reflect their own distractions, values, or readiness, but it doesn't reflect who you are. If your self-worth depends on someone else's gaze, you've handed them your freedom. And that is something a Stoic would never allow. Instead of letting sorrow, anger, or self-doubt take hold, turn abandonment into an invitation to reinvest in yourself. Focus on what you can control: your habits, your thoughts, your actions. Read a new book, learn a new skill, cultivate a better routine. Seek out those who truly listen, who share and honor your real worth, not to fill a void, but to build the emotional ecosystem you deserve. A Stoic knows the more you chase attention from those unwilling to give it, the more you disempower yourself. The right response isn't revenge or a forced display of indifference. It's to sincerely release the need for validation from places it will never come. This isn't avoidance. It's a conscious act of liberation, choosing not to let your mind be shackled by what lies beyond your control. By letting go of those who let go of you, you reclaim your sovereignty. You no longer wait for a nod of approval, a message back, or a subtle sign to feel that you matter. Your value no longer lives out there. It is cultivated within. And when you are rooted in your own truth, you no longer need anyone to affirm you. You've known all along that you were enough. 2. Don't react on impulse. When faced with rejection, our emotional response often arrives in a flash. It might be anger, hurt, confusion, or the urge to strike back immediately. These reactions are natural. Our brains are wired to defend against anything perceived as a threat. But the danger lies in this: when we allow emotion to dictate action, we lose control, speak words we can't take back, and do things we later regret. This is exactly what Stoicism warns us about. Impulsive emotion is not a sign of authenticity, but a sign of surrendering to circumstance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Hold fast to serenity. Let reason lead the way." It's a reminder that fleeting emotions should never guide lasting actions. When someone hurts you, ignores you, or treats you with disrespect, your first task isn't to react, it's to pause. That moment of stillness, even just a few seconds, creates space for clarity. And within that space, you can choose to respond instead of react. This seemingly small shift is the boundary between a person ruled by the moment and one who rules themselves. The Stoic does not reject emotion, but sees it for what it is: information. not instruction. When anger flares, they examine it, trace its origin, and ask, where is this coming from? Is it valid? What happens if I act on it? Delaying reaction allows them to see things from a broader view, no longer confined to the narrow lens of a wounded ego. And when the mind is free from emotional control, decisions gain depth, become more constructive, and above all, reflect inner maturity. Choosing not to react impulsively doesn't mean becoming passive or tolerating mistreatment. It simply means refusing to let negative emotions take the wheel. Instead, the Stoic acts from reason, self-respect, and long-term intention. When insulted, they don't rush to retaliate, but step back, assess the moment, and choose to respond, or remain silent with dignity intact. When rejected in work or love, they don't let the sting dictate their next move, but treat the setback as a chance to reassess expectations, recalibrate, and move forward. Calm is not a natural state. It is a skill built through practice. Each moment you delay reaction, each time you pause to think before you act, you strengthen your discipline. Over time, that discipline becomes the bedrock of your character. The Stoic does not run from emotion, but transforms it into wisdom. By refusing to react on impulse, they preserve their inner peace, a treasure far greater than any fleeting victory in emotional conflict. 3. Remove them from your mind, not from your life. There are people who once held great importance to us, a friend, a former lover, a trusted colleague. But over time, they hurt us through indifference, betrayal, or cold rejection. The common reaction is to erase them completely, block their number, delete photos, wipe away every trace. But Stoic philosophy offers a deeper approach. You don't need to erase them from reality. What matters is freeing your mind from their presence, because the more you dwell on them, with anger, regret, or sorrow, the more you imprison yourself in the past and shut the door to what lies ahead. Marcus Aurelius once stressed, the mind becomes what it consistently thinks about. If every day you revisit someone who caused you pain, even through anger or endless analyses, you are allowing them to influence your life long after they've gone. Holding someone in your mind is a subtle form of bondage. It drains your focus, delays your healing, and steals the present moment. Meanwhile, the Stoic knows that the inner self is the most valuable estate, and no one deserves a place there if they bring no value. Removing them from your mind does not deny their past significance. It's a recognition that their role in your growth has run its course. By letting go of the idealized image you once held, you create space for better things to enter. Holding on to someone with tangled emotions and unresolved pain not only exhausts you, it distorts how you see new relationships. Releasing your mind from obsession is an essential step in rebuilding life with clarity and self-possession. To do this, the Stoic does not avoid or pretend to forget. They confront their emotions, observe them as part of the human experience, and then redirect their energy to what is useful. They read, they train the body, they engage with community, they focus on skills and personal goals. And as the mind becomes filled with action that holds meaning, there is no room left for painful memories to take root. There's no need to force forgetting. The mind naturally discards what no longer receives attention. In that process, the Stoic remains calm. They don't erase the other person out of vengeance or denial. They simply revoke their right to dwell in the inner world. They may still cross paths, still behave with courtesy if needed, but the emotional noise is gone. And when the mind is no longer disturbed by the past, the present becomes clear, allowing wiser choices and a life free from emotional captivity. 4. Act, don't justify. When faced with rejection, dismissal, or lack of trust from others, the instinctive response is often to explain, defend, or justify ourselves in an attempt to regain standing in their eyes. Yet, according to Stoic thought, verbal justifications rarely lead to real resolution. On the contrary, they often weaken our position, tether us to external opinion, and erode our agency. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste time debating what a good person should be. Be one." This isn't mere advice. It's a core Stoic principle. Let actions speak in place of words. Justification stems from a desire to be understood, accepted, or forgiven. But in many situations, especially after rejection or suspicion, words cease to be persuasive. That's because emotion has already clouded the other person's perception. In such a state, any explanation may seem defensive, weak, or like a desperate grasp at something already lost. The Stoic chooses a different path: quiet, decisive action to rebuild worth, not to impress others, but to foster inner growth. When you shift your focus from speaking to doing, you reclaim your ground. You stop chasing approval and start aligning with what is right, anchored in integrity, developing skills, achieving goals, strengthening discipline, and pressing forward. These are how the Stoic responds to doubt without uttering a word. In that process, progress becomes the clearest evidence of true value. No declarations, no rebuttals. The results will speak for themselves. Practicing this principle demands patience and a willingness to walk aligned. Meaningful action often takes time to bear fruit. You may not be recognized right away. You might be misunderstood for a long while. But the Stoic isn't driven by visibility. They are guided by the quality of their refinement. They believe that truth can be obscured, but never erased. Eventually, the outcome becomes too clear to deny. To stop justifying is not to surrender. It's a choice to stop pouring energy into fruitless conversations. It's a full redirection of effort into the work of genuine growth. The Stoic understands that value lies not in promises, but in consistent action, day after day. And when action is strong enough, words become unnecessary. There is nothing left to prove, because their life becomes the loudest proof of all. 5. Silence is the wiser response. In a world where people rush to react to every provocation, from a disrespectful comment to a vague post on social media, silence becomes an unusual yet profoundly powerful choice. Stoicism sees silence not as weakness or avoidance, but as a high form of inner control. When insulted, ignored, or misunderstood, the first instinct is to speak out in self-defense, to explain, or even to retaliate. But the Stoic pauses. They choose silence, not out of fear, but out of the understanding that a hasty reaction only drags them into an emotional swamp they don't need to enter. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "You are not obligated to have an opinion." Choosing not to respond, not to argue, not to fuel the fire, is an act of willpower. When someone deliberately provokes you through words, coldness, or disrespect, your calm and refusal to react instantly strips them of control over your emotions. It not only protects your peace, but also prevents a chain of destructive actions that would arise if you lashed out in anger. Silence gives you the space to reflect, to reassess, and if necessary, to respond deliberately. Silence is also a way to set boundaries. When you stop explaining, stop justifying, stop seeking approval from those who don't value you, you send a clear message. You refuse to be drawn into relationships, conversations, or environments that don't align with your principles. Words can be twisted and misinterpreted, but silence is harder to distort. It leaves space for others to face their own behavior, and in some cases, forces them to reflect when their provocation meets no expected resistance. Silence is also time to recover. After rejection, hurt, or insult, withdrawing into silence helps you reclaim your energy, reconnect with yourself, and reestablish your inner worth. In Stoic philosophy, turning inward to listen to yourself matters far more than chasing the noise outside. Not every accusation deserves a rebuttal. Not every slight demands a response. And not everyone is worthy of your explanation. The right kind of silence at the right moment is a refined language, quiet, yet deeply resonant. Moreover, in tense or volatile situations, silence is a protective strategy rather than reacting and later regretting, or entering endless arguments. With no resolution, the Stoic steps back, not in defeat, but in wisdom, knowing that there is no real victory if inner peace is lost. In that silence, they nurture their strength, restore clarity of thought, and wait for the right moment to act if action is truly needed. Silence is not helplessness. It is a conscious decision made by someone who knows their worth and refuses to let others dictate when or how they should speak. In a world of noise and knee-jerk reactions, silence becomes a symbol of presence, of inner strength, and the foundation for a life untangled from emotional chaos. 6. Turn pain into power. In the course of life, no one escapes moments of pain, rejection, betrayal, failure, or loss. Pain arrives in many forms: a cold remark, a sudden decision, or a prolonged silence that slowly fractures the soul. Instinctively, we often respond to pain with blame, complaint, or resignation. Yet Stoic philosophy views pain as raw material, a kind of energy that, when handled with wisdom, can be transformed into strength for personal growth and the redefinition of one's path. Marcus Aurelius once affirmed, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the essence of turning adversity into momentum. To the Stoic, pain is not an enemy to eliminate, but a teacher to observe. It emerges as a signal. Something must shift, be adjusted, or released. Rather than avoid the discomfort, the Stoic chooses to confront it, to watch it as a temporary condition, never confusing it with identity. In doing so, they create distance between myself and my pain, and in that distance lies mastery. Turning pain into motivation doesn't mean denying negative emotions. It means learning to use them as fuel. When rejected, instead of spiraling into unworthiness, the Stoic asks, "What can I learn from this?" That question opens the door to growth. It leads to action, learning new skills, strengthening resilience, adjusting expectations, or refining willpower. At that point, pain ceases to be a weight and becomes momentum, propelling them forward with greater clarity and purpose. The Stoic mindset also emphasizes placing pain in a wider frame. A single bad event doesn't define a whole life. One failure is not the final word. Training the mind to see beyond immediate emotion helps one endure what once felt unbearable. Stoics practice envisioning misfortune in advance, premeditatio malorum, not out of pessimism, but to prepare the soul, so that when hardship arrives, they meet it not with panic, but with peace. Most importantly, transforming pain into power is proof of inner autonomy. It shows that a person is not ruled by circumstance, but refines themselves through it, without blaming, without waiting for approval or rescue. The Stoic finds in the very source of their wounds a chance to become stronger, wiser, and more composed. When pain is no longer a reason to stop, but the reason to rise, that is, when the soul reaches true freedom. 7. Reclaim joy as an act of defiance. In times of rejection, abandonment, or disappointment, people often fall into a heavy psychological state. Sadness, anger, or a sense of hurt tends to consume the mind, rendering daily activities meaningless or lifeless. The common response is withdrawal, self-isolation, or seeking comfort in negative thoughts. Yet Stoic philosophy offers a different path. Instead of staying in that dark space, actively seek out joy as a form of resistance, because cultivating joy, especially in adversity, is not denial of reality, but a deliberate choice to reclaim agency over one's inner life. The Stoic understands that joy is not the result of favorable conditions, but the product of inner self-command. Choosing to pursue even small positive experiences is a way to affirm that life is not dictated by circumstance. When rejected, continuing to exercise, talk with kind people, listen to favorite music, or engage in a wholesome hobby not only lifts the spirit, it also sends a powerful message. I am still here, still free to choose how I face this challenge. That is what separates the defeated from the resilient. Seeking joy is also how we restore mental energy. After being wounded, the mind needs a place to recover. If all energy is spent on analysis, regret, or emotional resistance, it quickly runs dry. The Stoic does not linger in dissecting past pain. They choose action, and in that action, they create moments of lightness that soothe the soul. A walk in nature, coffee with an old friend, or a few good pages of a book. Each can be a small yet powerful step toward emotional renewal. Joy goes beyond personal healing. It becomes a silent protest against coldness or prejudice. When you're looked down on yet continue living with warmth. When you're rejected but still smile sincerely, it shows that your worth is not defined by others' actions. In a world where negativity is a reflex, maintaining a positive posture becomes a wordless yet potent rebellion. It reveals inner strength and the ability to rise above the need for external approval, to return to an inner peace. In Stoic thought, no one can take away your joy unless you allow it. Joy doesn't depend on being loved or accepted. It depends on your willingness to live fully in the present. When a person chooses joy in the face of hardship, they not only begin to heal, they declare they have reclaimed emotional sovereignty from circumstance. And that, the Stoics say, is one of the most powerful acts of defiance a human being can make. 8. Build substance, not image. In a world increasingly shaped by social media, where personal identity is trimmed, polished, and displayed like a public digital resume, people are more prone than ever to chase validation rather than genuine growth. They invest time crafting impressions, curating reputation, adjusting every detail of life to match a favored mold. Yet in Stoic philosophy, image is never the end goal. What matters is not how you are perceived, but who you truly are. Building character, rather than maintaining a polished persona, is the deeper and more enduring path through life. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us that praise cannot make a person noble, just as contempt cannot strip away real dignity. From a Stoic perspective, the only thing within your control is your inner character. Integrity, patience, resilience, clarity, and a sense of duty. These qualities cannot be bought, cannot be staged, and cannot be borrowed from the opinions of others. They can only be forged through action, through deliberate choice, and through unfearing adherence to principle. Especially in times of trial, constructing a public image without inner depth leads to long-term instability. Such a person becomes overly sensitive to feedback, easily wounded by judgment, and constantly shifts behavior to meet social expectations rather than honoring personal values. The Stoic, in contrast, places no faith in what is easily altered. They invest in wisdom, in moral character, in discipline, because only these endure and remain untouched by external upheaval. With that foundation in place, appearance, whether carefully managed or not, becomes secondary to inner worth. To build substance is also to generate authentic influence. Influence does not come from words or aesthetics, but from the sense of steadiness, transparency, and buzz others feel in your presence. When your life aligns with your principles, when your words match your deeds, when you maintain your values even through rejection or misunderstanding, there is no need to prove anything. Your presence, your calm demeanor, and your clarity of thought will communicate everything that matters. In Stoic thought, building value is a journey with no finish line. It is a lifelong refinement, quiet, gradual, and without need for display. They believe that if you are truly valuable, it will show, not through the spotlight, but through the quiet gravity of a life lived with conviction. At that point, image no longer serves to validate your identity. It becomes a natural reflection of a mind rooted in honesty and strength. 9. Act as if they no longer exist. In life, there will be people who disappoint you, dismiss you, or even deliberately hurt you through indifference, insults, or recurring toxic behavior. The common response is to cling to that relationship in your mind, to try to fix the person, to seek fairness through confrontation, explanation, or persuasion. But to the Stoic, such efforts are often futile and emotionally draining. The wiser response is to consciously withdraw from that spiral by behaving as if that person no longer exists within your mental and emotional space. To act as if someone no longer exists is not a literal or moral erasure. It is a deliberate shift in perspective. It means choosing not to invest emotion, not to react, and not to allow that person's words or actions to disturb your inner peace. In Stoic philosophy, this is a mark of self-mastery. When you no longer let another's behavior dictate your internal response, the Stoic clearly sees the boundary between what can and cannot be controlled, and chooses to focus energy only where growth is possible. To keep someone alive in your mind through anger, hurt, or obsession is a form of invisible bondage. Even if you no longer speak to them, if they still influence your moods and decisions, they still occupy space within you. By acting as if they don't exist, you reclaim sovereignty over your thoughts, redirecting focus toward people, pursuits, and values that actually support your personal evolution. This is not denial of reality. It is a conscious choice to reserve your energy for what truly matters. Absence in the mind doesn't require dramatic declarations or severing gestures. It unfolds quietly when you stop analyzing their behavior, stop hoping they'll change, stop expecting an apology, and most of all, stop feeling the need to react every time their memory surfaces. It is a deep, calm silence in which their presence no longer influences your decisions, your mood, or your behavior. They are not hated, not avenged, not idealized. They are simply no longer relevant to the flow of your present thoughts and emotions. Stoicism does not advocate avoidance. It teaches clarity, seeing things as they are, and responding in ways that protect your inner stability. When you act as if they no longer exist, it's not to prove anything, but because you recognize that focusing on your own path matters more than reacting to what no longer serves you. And when you turn your full attention to meaningful relationships and worthy goals, you are choosing a life that is richer, healthier, and freer in spirit. 10. Reset expectations, not self-worth. In moments of rejection or disappointment, people often slip into what did I do wrong? Why would they treat me this way? Or, am I just not good enough? On the surface, these questions may seem like self-awareness, but if left unchecked, they lead to a deeper danger, confusing unmet expectations with diminished self-worth. In Stoic philosophy, this is a critical mistake to be corrected. A wise person does not let circumstances shape their dignity. They revise their expectations to align with reality and the limits of the world around them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." Within that is a core Stoic principle for facing emotional pain. When we pin our expectations on how others should respond, hoping they will like us, listen to us, support us, we surrender control of our emotions to things beyond our grasp. But when we place expectations on our ability to govern our behavior, thoughts, and character, we remain steady even when the world around us strays from what we hoped. Adjusting expectations does not mean abandoning goals or living passively. It is the proactive recognition that not everyone sees the world as we do, that not all efforts are met with timely recognition, and that not every good deed is welcomed. In such a world, rather than attaching self-worth to outcomes or approval, the Stoic way shifts inward. Did I act according to my values? Did I uphold virtue even when rejected? Am I still moving forward, undistracted by unnecessary emotion? Resetting expectations also cultivates healthier relationships. When we understand that others have limits in empathy, attention, or time, we no longer demand responses that match our ideals. This creates room for compassion. Without compromising self-respect, the Stoic maintains emotional distance, not clinging in coldness and not crumbling in rejection. They understand that self-worth cannot be built on fleeting praise or external validation. It must be forged from within, through repeated right action. To reset expectations is an act of inner strength that frees one from emotional dependence on others. When expectations are misplaced, pain is inevitable. But when they are redirected toward what we control, our attitude, patience, and integrity, then rejection is no longer an insult, but merely another variable in the current of life. And when self-worth is no longer tied to external approval, one reaches a steadiness that cannot be taken away. 11. Don't beg for attention. In today's world, where people constantly share their personal lives on social media, attention seems to have become a kind of currency. Being seen, mentioned, or praised has quietly turned into a goal for many, whether they realize it or not. But in Stoic philosophy, attention from others is not something to pursue. On the contrary, it's something to remove from the list of concerns. A Stoic doesn't live to be noticed. They live in alignment with their inner values, whether or not anyone acknowledges or observes it. For attention is outside our control, while personal character is entirely within the grasp of the practitioner. To beg for attention is to trade inner freedom for a fleeting sense of visibility. When someone acts, speaks, or chooses their path in life just to be noticed or to please others, they hand over control of themselves to the eyes of the crowd. They stop living by reason and principle and begin chasing reactions and social expectations. In the short term, this may provide a sense of validation, but over time, it leads to disorientation, vulnerability, and dependence on external approval. The Stoic refuses to live that way. They train themselves to be whole from within, not needing praise to know they are worthy. Not seeking attention does not mean detachment or arrogance. It is the mark of a centered mind, one that doesn't need society's reflection to affirm its own presence. They focus on doing what is right, living ethically, improving themselves daily, and honoring their core values without waiting for applause. In times of rejection or being ignored, the Stoic doesn't alter their behavior to be noticed again. They don't plead for emotional rescue, don't display lack, and don't perform for approval. They let silence speak their confidence. They let steady action prove their strength. Rejecting the urge to beg for attention is also how the Stoic protects their self-respect. They know that if someone must be asked to see them, then the recognition loses its worth. What is granted through pleading is never truly earned. And if someone fails to notice your presence, it is not a fault or a failure. It is merely a mismatch in awareness. In all situations, the Stoic holds to this principle: live by reason, act with dignity, and let outcomes speak for themselves. That quiet but unwavering presence is the ultimate proof of true worth, something that never requires attention to be real. 12. Be kind, but keep your distance. Kindness is one of the core virtues upheld by every philosophical tradition. And in Stoicism, it is not only a moral act, but a rational choice. However, the Stoic does not confuse kindness with weakness, nor gentleness with vulnerability. This philosophy teaches that one can treat others with decency without allowing their emotions to be entangled, without trading inner security for surface-level harmony. Kindness does not mean opening the gates to anyone who wishes to enter your inner world. It must be paired with a clear understanding of boundaries between social responsibility and responsibility to oneself. When rejected, dismissed, or treated unfairly, the first emotional reaction is often pain, followed by the urge to sever ties, retaliate, or withdraw. But for the Stoic, extreme resource cases are not the path. They continue to act with kindness, not because the other person deserves it, but because they themselves choose to remain principled. That kindness, however, is not passive endurance. It is paired with firm boundaries. They are willing to help when possible, to listen when needed, but they do not allow another's negativity to breach their inner stability. The distance they create is not avoidance. It is protection for their mental equilibrium. Maintaining distance is not coldness or apathy. It is emotional intelligence in action. The Stoic understands that not everyone is capable of fairness or understanding, and expecting otherwise only leads to disappointment. Their kindness is rooted in self-possession, not in emotional dependence on others' moods or treatment. When a relationship begins to disturb their mental well-being, they feel no need for conflict or explanation. They simply step back, reduce interaction, and invest energy into what nurtures true value. To be kind while keeping distance is also a way to avoid toxic emotional cycles. In relationships where hurt is repeated, apologies followed by the same harm, kindness without boundaries becomes an open door for violation. The Stoic does not trap themselves in guilt for saying no, nor do they feel the need to justify their self-protection. They treat their inner peace as a possession worth safeguarding, maintaining connections only where growth and health are possible. In Stoic thought, kindness need not be loud, and self-preservation requires no permission. One can be both kind and firm, compassionate and clear about limits. By living this principle, they remain humane without losing clarity. And in a world where emotions are easily manipulated, kindness paired with distance becomes the highest expression of maturity and emotional self-governance. 13. Hold on to your dignity, even in pain. Pain is an inevitable part of every human life. There are moments when one must face rejection, betrayal, misunderstanding, or losses too deep for words. The natural human reaction in such moments is to let emotion take the lead, to cry, lash out, blame others, or seek sympathy as a way to ease the inner wound. Yet in Stoic philosophy, emotion is not denied, but it must be directed in a way that does not compromise personal dignity. The Stoic chooses to preserve composure, grace, and self-respect, even in the midst of deep suffering. not to appear strong, but because they understand that true character is most clearly revealed in adversity. Dignity is not a facade we build to hide weakness. It is an inner steadiness unmatched by external chaos. To hold on to dignity in pain does not mean repressing emotion, but placing it in the right context at the right time, with the right people. It is the ability to regulate one's response, to not let a surge of emotion break one's code of conduct, to avoid saying what will lead to regret, to refrain from actions that betray one's values. In Stoicism, this is one of the highest expressions of reason, when a person can feel deeply without being conquered by the depth of that pain. The Stoic does not live to prove to others they are okay. They live to ensure that pain does not distort who they are. When hurt by someone, they do not react with attacks, do not seek to belittle the other, and do not diminish themselves by begging for sympathy. They accept that negative emotion is unavoidable, but how they respond to it is a personal choice. Dignity means choosing to respond with clarity, choosing calm over impulse, choosing silence when words add no value, and choosing to step back with grace rather than making noise to reclaim it. The most vulnerable moments, holding on to dignity is an act of inner strength. It allows a person to preserve self-respect, to not let pain erode the foundation of their principles. They don't have to hide their emotions, but they don't let emotion dictate behavior. They may cry, grieve, or feel defeated, but in all of it, they maintain the boundary between reason and emotional impulse. And it is this groundedness that keeps them from losing themselves, even when the world seems to turn away. Stoicism does not encourage rigidity or emotional numbness. It trains the ability to remain oneself even under deep distress. Holding on to dignity in adversity is not an act meant to impress. It is a duty to one's character, because in every circumstance, whether embraced or rejected, it is our steadfast commitment to virtue that defines who we truly are. And when one holds their dignity through the worst, they have taken a profound step toward self-mastery, the aim of every noble philosophy. We cannot control how others treat us, but we can always control how we respond. In my own everyday life, I've often found myself feeling abandoned, misunderstood, or rejected by people I once deeply trusted. There were moments when I asked myself, am I not good enough? Or am I simply not important to them? But the more I live, and the more I learn from Stoic philosophy, the more I realize that repeating these questions only traps me in an emotional spiral with no way out. What needs to change is not the fleeting emotion, but the perspective. I began observing myself whenever I felt hurt. Instead of reacting right away, I learned to take a step back, remain silent if necessary, and take time to reconnect with myself. In those moments, I didn't rush to fill the emptiness by seeking someone else. I walked, read, journaled, exercised, anything that brought me back to the present and helped me regain balance. And when my mind became calmer, I could finally see no one can truly hurt me unless I allow it. Practicing Stoicism in daily life isn't about lofty philosophy. It's about small, consistent actions, from not responding to a cold message with sadness to choosing to remain kind to someone who turned away, but from a safe, healthy distance. It's a long journey, but each time I overcome a negative emotion without losing myself, I know I've become a little stronger than I was yesterday. We can't control every rejection, but we can always control how we face it. Each moment of being ignored, misunderstood, or underestimated is not a crack in our worth. It's a chance to reinforce our inner strength and return to what truly matters: ourselves. If you're going through a wave of emotions right now, remember, Calmness and dignity are never signs of weakness. They are clear markers of a mature mind. Share this video with someone who's struggling with hurt and doesn't know where to begin. And if you want to continue building inner resilience through the Stoic path, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and explore more content on this channel. This journey, we walk it together. See you in the next video.